All right. I would say this is an overflow crowd for a Friday. All right. Good afternoon. Secretary General is continuing his trip to India. This morning in New Delhi, he took part in a panel at the AI Impact Summit, and the panel was on the role of science in international AI governance. The Secretary General told participants that AI innovation is moving at the speed of light, outpacing our collective ability to fully understand it, let alone govern it. If we want AI to serve humanity, he said, policy cannot be built on guesswork. We need the facts, we need trust, and we need to share that trust, and those facts need to be shared across countries and across sectors. That's why the UN is building a practical architecture that can put science at the center of international cooperation on AI, he said. In the afternoon, the Secretary General had bilateral meetings with the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, as well as with the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, and you will have seen those readouts of those meetings. Throughout the day, the Secretary General had exchanges with the government and tech leaders, including members of the newly created Independent International Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence. The Secretary General also took part in a roundtable organized by our colleagues to discuss renewable energy and energy transition. The discussions brought together senior figures from industry, finance, policy, and civil society in an effort to identify concrete steps to further accelerate renewable energy deployment, strengthen grids and storage, as well as mobilize investment at scale. And over the weekend, the Secretary General will travel to Geneva, Switzerland, where on Monday he will deliver remarks at the opening of the 61st session of the Human Rights Council. Later in the day, he will also address the high-level segment of the 2026 session of the Conference on Disarmament. And as we mentioned earlier this week, he will also be having a number of bilateral meetings with senior officials, ministers, and others who are in attendance of both those events. He's also scheduled to participate in an event hosted by the Vice President of the Swiss Confederation, Ignacio Cassis, to mark the completion of a new visitors center at the UN in Geneva, and he'll be heading back here on Monday evening. Tom Fletcher, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Emergency Relief Coordinator, arrived in South Sudan today to visit one of the most underreported humanitarian crises on the world. He will spend the next 5 days assessing the situation in the country firsthand and drawing international attention to the acute but largely forgotten crisis there. Mr. Fletcher traveled directly to Malakal in Upper Nile State upon his arrival, meeting with local communities, their leaders, South Sudanese returnees, hearing firsthand about their needs and the challenges they face amidst the ongoing conflict in neighboring Sudan. He's scheduled to visit Jonglei State, where, as you will recall, a recent flare-up in conflict has further intensified the humanitarian needs and made our work even more challenging. Throughout the visit, he will meet with local responders who are on the front lines. He will continue to advocate for the protection of civilians and humanitarian workers, reiterate our urgent calls for support to the humanitarian response, and call for coordinated efforts to tackle the root causes of the crisis. Turning to Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that families continue to live in overcrowded shelters, which of course poses severe fire risk as well as health risks. Families cook, sleep, and store their belongings in small spaces and often use open fire to cook the food that they have. Since November of last year, our partners have recorded at least 12 fires in these shelters. In 10 days leading up to the 17th of February, humanitarians provided shelters to about 85 families in Deir el-Balah and Khan Yunis, whose shelters were damaged by a fire in Gaza City. Partners have been raising fire safety awareness among displaced families to reduce risk. Displaced families need adequate shelter to protect them from elements and provide more privacy. Our partners working in shelters reiterate the urgent need to move towards more sustainable solution. In many areas within Gaza, humanitarian movements still require coordination with the Israeli authorities. Of 67 movements coordinated between the 12th and the 19th of February, 43 were approved and 9 were denied outright. 8 missions were approved but faced impediments, of which 6 were fully accomplished. Organizers canceled 7 other missions for operational or security reasons. Humanitarian partners coordinated the entry of fuel, medical supplies, animal fodder, and hygiene kits. The teams also facilitated the evacuation of patients through Rafah and Karim Shalom crossings. Turning to the West Bank, our humanitarian colleagues warned of the continued violence and other coercive practices by Israeli forces and the settler communities, resulting in casualties, destruction of property, and forced displacement. Between the 3rd and the 16th of February, Israeli forces killed 3 Palestinians, bringing the total number this year to 9, including 2 children. Palestinian security forces killed 1 Palestinian child in Tamun while attempting to arrest his father. During the same period, at least 86 Israeli settler attacks were recorded, over which 60 Palestinians were injured and some 146 were displaced. People in 60 communities have been impacted by the attacks. Overall, since January 2023 and as of 16 February, some 880 Palestinian families, that's over 4,700 people, have been displaced across the West Bank due to settler attacks and access restrictions. And I just want to flag one particular case, and that the Secretary General condemns the killing of Nasrallah Abu Sayyam, a 19-year-old dual Palestinian-American citizen who was shot and beaten in an attack by Israeli settlers in the village of Mukmas in the occupied West Bank. This took place on Thursday, and Nasrallah then succumbed to his wounds later in the day. In the same attack, settlers shot and injured 3 other Palestinians. The Secretary General extends his heartfelt condolences to the family and loved ones of the victim. That family sadly includes your colleague, Abdelhamid Sayyam. On behalf of my office, we extend his condolences to him and his entire family. The Secretary General calls for a prompt, thorough, and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this incident and for those responsible to be held to account. And he urges the government of Israel to take concrete steps to halt and prevent all acts of violence by Israeli settlers against Palestinian population, and that would be following their obligations as the occupying power. Quick note up north on the activities of our Blue Helmets in southern Lebanon. This week, peacekeepers have found several unexploded ordnances, including rockets, bombs, and rocket launchers at multiple locations within their area of operations. Yesterday, peacekeepers also discovered anti-tank mines in the ruins of a house in Sector East. As per usual practice, all of these were referred to the Lebanese Armed Forces for disposal. The peacekeeping mission also continues to report daily Israeli Defense Forces activities on land and air inside Lebanese territories and continues to observe firings across the Blue Line. Yesterday, several projectiles fired from the south of the Blue Line, impacting near Kfar Kila in Sector East and Yarun in Sector West. In incidents of obstruction and aggression, behavior directed at peacekeepers is also continuing. In a serious incident of intimidation, the peacekeeping mission tells us that on Tuesday, a peacekeeper performing his duty inside a UN position near Nakura, which is about 10 meters from the IDF perimeter fence, was approached by IDF personnel who aimed their weapons at him and ordered him to move. We reiterate that any intimidation or interference against our UN peacekeepers must stop. We once again call on everyone to uphold their obligations under Security Council Resolution 1701. Our colleagues at the World Food Programme are sounding the alarm that its life-saving emergency and nutrition assistance in Somalia is at imminent risk of stopping. WFP said that they urgently require $95 million to continue supporting the most food-insecure people in Somalia between March and August of this year. Without immediate funding, the WFP says it will be forced to halt humanitarian assistance by April. This warning follows the declaration of a national drought emergency. In 2022, the longest drought in recorded history brought Somalia to the brink of famine. In response, with critical support from donors, partners, and government, WFP launched a robust scale-up of life-saving assistance, reaching record numbers of the most vulnerable and helping keep famine at bay. But today, the agency is facing a severe funding shortfall that has forced it to reduce the number of people receiving emergency food assistance from 2.2 million in early of last year to just over 600,000 now. WFP noted a quarter of the population in Somalia, that's 4.4 million human beings, face crisis level of food insecurity or worse, including nearly 1 million women, men, and children experiencing severe hunger. And from the DRC, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that they remain deeply concerned by the continued clashes in several villages across Fizi and Uvira territory in South Kivu. Since Monday, violence has displaced at least 15,000 people, just since Monday, from Limara to the surrounding villages. Residents, mostly women and children, are fleeing into the bush for safety, while others remain confined to their homes. Our OCHA and their partners continue to engage with all parties to facilitate the safe movement of civilians and humanitarian aid. Our humanitarian colleagues also stress we need safe movement of supplies to be able to scale up operations. Everyone involved in this conflict must comply with their obligations under international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure, so we can have sustained and unfettered humanitarian access. The 2026 Humanitarian Needs Response Plan for DRC requires $1.4 billion to assist 7.3 of the country's most vulnerable people. To date, the plan is only 10% funded. More support is urgently required to maintain humanitarian operations and prevent further deterioration at this point. Turning to Ukraine today, UN Women noted that 4 years into Russia's full-scale invasion, millions in Ukraine struggle to keep the lights on and the heat in their homes, with the crisis taking a particular toll on women. The agency points out that many Ukrainian women work in sectors that are the hardest hit by the extended power cuts, such as education, health, social work, and retail, and they are now losing their jobs. According to UN Women, 2025 was the deadliest year of the conflict for women so far, and that since 24th February 2022, more than 5,000 women and girls have been confirmed killed and 14,000 injured. The real toll is probably much higher. For its part, WHO said today that the conflict's devastating toll on health is further deepened by attacks on healthcare, which are severe and widespread in Ukraine. A couple of depressing reports to flag for you. One is a joint one by our UN office in Haiti and the UN Human Rights Office there. They detail the brutal and widespread trafficking in children by Haitian gangs. According to the report, most of the 26 gangs currently operating in Haiti are trafficking in children. The report describes different forms of exploitation to which these children are subjected to. They range from running drugs, monitoring security, running errands, monitoring security forces, or collecting extortion payments, to more violent acts like sexual violence, kidnapping, targeted killings. There is no comprehensive data, unfortunately, on the number of children being trafficked by these gangs. However, in 2024, we estimated that more than 500,000 children are living in areas that are under the effective control of gangs. That number today must be also much higher. As per the latest estimates, the gang violence has forced more than 1.4 million people to flee their homes. More than half of them are children. More information online. And a report today published by the UN Human Rights Office on scam centers graphically details the lived experiences of some of the hundreds of thousands of people trafficked from dozens of countries around the world into working in entrenched scam operations, mostly in Southeast Asia, but as well in other places in the world. The report documents instances of torture, sexual abuse and exploitation, forced abortions, food deprivation, solitary confinement, among other horrific and grave human rights violations. Victims describe being lured into scamming jobs under false pretenses, then being coerced into perpetrating online fraud. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk noted that rather than receiving protection, care, and rehabilitation, as well as pathways to justice and redress, which they are entitled to, these victims too often face disbelief, stigmatization, and even further punishment. He stressed that effective response needs to be centered on human rights law and standards. Crucially, he said, that means explicitly recognizing forced criminality within anti-trafficking laws and regulations, and guaranteeing the non-punishment principle of victims of trafficking. Today's the World Day of Social Justice. As the name suggests, the day it promotes fairness, equity, and inclusion for everyone, everywhere. Tomorrow is the International Day of Mother Language. This year's theme is Youth Voices on Multilingual Education, highlights young people as champions of linguistic diversity and inclusive education that fosters understanding. Lastly, Friday, we got 2 countries paid today. A little quiz for you. It's challenging. These 2 countries are both island nations. Both begin with the letter M. One country is in the northern hemisphere, and one country is in the southern hemisphere, and they are separated by 3 time zones. Sorry? Maldives, yes. No, sorry, not Maldives. Sorry, I'm sorry. No, sorry? Mauritius, yes. Micronesia, no. So Mauritius is in the southern hemisphere. Now think of one in the northern hemisphere that is also an island nation. Exactly, very well. So we thank our friends in Valletta and Port Louis for their full contributions to the regular budget. We're now up to 71 thanks to Malta and Mauritius. Pan, you get the first question, if you have one.
Thank you, Steph. Iranian UN Ambassador Iravani sent a letter to the Secretary General and the President to the Security Council yesterday. And he asked the SG and the Security Council to act without delay. So has the SG read the letter, and what's his reaction? Thank you.
The letter from the Permanent Mission of Iran?
Yes.
Yes, the letter has gone to the Security Council and to the General Assembly as requested to by the Permanent Mission of Iran. And I can tell you and reiterate yet again that we are very concerned about the heightened rhetoric we're seeing around the region, by the heightened military activities, war games, or just increased military naval presence and in the region. And we encourage both the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue to engage in diplomacy in order to settle the differences. Edie.
First, the United Nations Correspondents Associations also sends condolences to our colleague Abdul Hamid Siam on the death of his cousin. Secondly, at the Artificial Intelligence Summit in India, which the Secretary General attended, the United States said that it opposes any global rules on regulating artificial intelligence. Does the Secretary General have any reaction to that?
Well, you know, I will let you. I think that the reaction is encompassed in what the Secretary General said. The Secretary General is not calling for the United Nations to rule over AI. He's calling for and has put in place an architecture with the help of member states to try to ensure that everybody gets a seat at the table, right? And as he said yesterday, that it's not left in the hands of a few nations and on the whims of billionaires. AI will and has already impacted all of us. It is vital that those countries who may not have the technology also have a voice, and that science and fairness be put at the center of AI. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. Do you have any comments on the U.S. Supreme Court decision on tariffs, by any chance?
No, by any chance, no. But just to reiterate what we've always said is that in a trade war, in a tariff war, there are no winners.
And secondly, if I may, do you expect any payments from the United States, like shortly in the coming days, weeks, or?
Well, we've had, as I think we've confirmed to some of you, we've received $160 million from the United States a few days ago for payment to their dues in 2025. And obviously, when there are more payments, we will let you know.
And did they explain why it was like 160? Why not less, not more?
I think those are questions you need to ask them.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any question? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
President Trump said yesterday at the Board of Peace meeting that he would be speaking with the Secretary General in a little while. So when is a talk expected to take place?
Well, obviously, as you know, the Secretary General is in India, so it's about, 8.5 hours ahead of New York. We're still expecting a call, but I think with the time difference, obviously that's a bit challenging. As soon as the call occurs, we will let you know. Okay. Thank you all. I wish you all a peaceful weekend.